Welcome to the 1,000 Nights and One Night. Now, when it was the 185th night, she said, "It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when Princess Budur saw Kamar al-Zaman, she was forthwith seized with a transport of passion and yearning and love-longing, and she said to herself, Alas, my shame, this is a strange youth, and I know him not. How cometh he to be lying by my side on one bed?" Then she looked at him a second time, and noting his beauty and loveliness, said, "By Allah, he is indeed a comely youth, and my heart is well nigh torn in sunder and longing for him. But alas, how am I shamed by him! By the Almighty, had I known it was this youth who sought me in marriage of my father, I had not rejected him, but have wived with him and enjoyed his loveliness." Then she gazed in his face and said, "O my Lord and light of mine eyes, awake from sleep, and take thy pleasure in my beauty and grace." And she moved her with his hand. But Maymunah and Jinnah let him down sleep upon him, as it were a curtain, and pressed heavily on his head with wings, so that Kamar al-Zaman woke him not. Then Princess Budur shook him with her hands and said, "My life on thee, hearken to me, awaken up from thy sleep, and look on the narcissus and the tender down thereon, and enjoy the sight of naked waist and navel, and dazzle me and tumble me from this moment till break of day. All upon thee, O my lord, sit up and prop thee against the pillow, and slumber not." Still Kamar al-Zaman made her no reply, but breathed hard in his sleep. Continued she, "Alas, alas, thou art insolent in thy beauty and comeliness, and grace and loving looks. But if thou art handsome, so am I handsome. What then is thou dust? Have they taught thee to flout me, or hath my father and the wretched old fellow made thee swear not to speak to me tonight?" But Kamar al-Zaman opened not his mouth, neither awoke, whereat her passion for him redoubled, and Allah inflamed her heart with love of him. She stole one glance of eyes that cost her 1,000 sighs. Her heart fluttered, and her vitals throbbed, and her hands and feet quivered, and she said to Kamar al-Zaman, "Talk to me, O Lord, speak to me, O my friend. Answer me, O my beloved, and tell me thy name, for indeed thou hast ravished my wit." And during all this time he abode, drowned in sleep, and answered her not a word. And Princess Budur sighed and said, "Alas, alas, why art thou so proud and self-satisfied?" Then she shook him, and turning his hand over, and saw his seal ring on his little finger, whereat she cried a loud cry, and followed it with a sigh of passion, and said, "Alack, alack, by Allah, thou art my beloved, and thou lovest me. Yet thou seemest to turn thee away from me out of the coquetry of all. O my darling, thou camest to me while I was asleep, and knew not what thou didst with me, and tookest my seal ring, and yet I will not pull it off thy finger." So saying, she opened the bosom of his shirt, and bent over him, and kissed him, and put forth her hand to him, seeking somewhat that she might take as a token, but found nothing. Then she thrust her hand into his breast, and because of the smoothness of his body, it slipped down to his waist, and thence to his navel, and thence to his yard, whereupon her heart ached, and her vitals quivered, and lust was sore upon her, for that the desire of women is fiercer than the desire of men, and she was ashamed of her shamelessness. Then she plucked his seal ring from his finger, and put it on her own instead of the ring he had taken, and bussed his inner lips and hands, nor did she leave any part of him unkissed, after which she took him to her breast, and embraced him, and laying one of her hands under his neck, and the other under his armpit, nestled close to him, and fell asleep by his side. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 186th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when Princess Budur fell asleep by the side of Kamar al-Zaman, after doing that which she did, quoth Maymunah to Danish, Sawest thou, O accursed, how proudly and coquettishly my beloved bore himself, and how hotly and passionately thy mistress showed herself to my dearling? There can be no doubt that my beloved is handsomer than thine. Nevertheless, I pardon thee. Then she wrote him a document of manumission, and turned to Kashkash and said, Go help Danish to take up his mistress, and aid him to carry her back to her own place, for the night waneth apace, and there is but little of it left. I hear and I obey, answered Kashkash. So the two Ifrits went forward to Princess Budur, and upraising her flew her away, then bearing her back to her own place, they laid her on her bed, while Maymunah abode alone with Kamar al-Zaman, gazing upon him as he slept, till the night was all but spent, when she went her way. As soon as morning morrowed, the prince awoke from sleep, and turned right and left, but found not the maiden by him, and said in his mind, What is this business? It is as if my father would incline me to marry with this damsel who was with me, and have now taken her away by stealth, to the intent that my desire for wedlock may redouble. Then he called out to the eunuch who slept at the door, saying, Woe to thee, O damned one, arise at once. So the eunuch rose, bemused with sleep, and brought him basin and ewer, and upon Kamar al-Zaman entered the water closet, and did his need, and then coming out made the wazu ablution, and prayed the dawn prayer, after which he sat telling on his beads the 99 names of Almighty Allah. Then he looked up and saw the eunuch standing in service upon him, and said, Out on thee, O Sawab! Who was it that came hither and took away the young lady from my side that I was still sleeping? Asked the eunuch, O my lord, what manner of young lady? The young lady who lay with me last night, replied Kamar al-Zaman. The eunuch was startled at these words, and said to him, By Allah, there hath been no one with thee, no young lady, nor any other. How should young lady have come to thee while I was sleeping in the doorway, and the door was locked? By Allah, O my lord, neither male nor female hath come into thee. Exclaimed the prince, Thou liest, O pestilent slave! Is it of thy competence also to hoodwink me, and refuse to tell me what is become of the young lady who lay with me last night, and decline to inform me who took her away? Replied the eunuch, and he was affrighted at him, By Allah, O my lord, I have neither seen a young lady nor young lord. His words only angered Kamar al-Zaman the more, and he said to him, O accursed one, my father hath indeed taught thee deceit. Come hither. So the eunuch came up to him, and the prince took him by the collar, and dashed him to the ground, whereupon he let fly a loud fart, and Kamar al-Zaman, kneeling upon him, kicked him and throttled him till he fainted away. Then he dragged him forth, tied him to the well rope, and let him down like a bucket into the well, and plunged him into the water, then drew him up, and lowered him down again. Now it was a hard winter weather, and Kamar al-Zaman ceased not to plunge the eunuch into the water, and pulling him up again, and dousing him, and hauling him up, whilst he screamed and called for help. And the prince kept on saying, By Allah, O damned one, I will not draw thee up out of this well till thou tell me and fully acquaint me with the story of the young lady, and who took her away whilst I slept. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 187th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that Kamar al-Zaman said to the eunuch, By Allah, I will not draw thee up out of this well until thou tell me the story of the young lady, and who took her away whilst I slept. Answered the eunuch, after he had seen death staring him in the face, O my lord, let me go, and I will relate to thee the truth and the whole tale. So Kamar al-Zaman pulled him up out of the well, all but dead for suffering with the cold and the pain of dripping and dousing, drubbing and dread of drowning. He shook like cane in hurricane. His teeth were clenched as by cramp, and his clothes were drenched, and his body befouled and torn by the rough sides of the well. Briefly, he was in a sad pickle. Now, when Kamar al-Zaman saw him in his sorry plight, he was concerned for him. But as soon as the eunuch found himself on the floor, he said to him, "O my lord, let me go and doff my clothes and wring them out and spread them in the sun to dry and don others, after which I will return to thee forthwith and tell thee the truth of the matter." Answered the prince, "O rascal slave, hadst thou not seen death face to face, never hast thou confessed in fact that told me the word. But go now, do thy will, and come back to me at once and tell me the truth." Thereupon the eunuch went out, and hardly crediting his escape, and ceased not running, stumbling, and rising in his haste, till he came in to King Shahriman, whom he found sitting at talk with his wazir of Kamar al-Zaman's case. And the king was saying to the minister, "I slept not last night for anxiety concerning my son, Kamar al-Zaman, and indeed I fear lest some harm befall him in that old tower. What good was there in imprisoning him?" Answered the wazir, "Have no care for him. By Allah, no harm will befall him, none at all. Leave him in the prison for a month till his temper yield and his spirit be broken, and he return to his senses." As the two spoke, behold, up rushed the eunuch in the aforesaid plight, making the king, who was troubled at sight of him, and he cried, "O our lord of the sultan, verily thy son's wits are fled, and he hath gone mad. He hath dealt with me thus and thus, so that I am become as thou seest me." And he kept saying, "A young lady lay with me this night, and stole away secretly whilst I slept. Where is she?" And he insisteth on me letting him know where she is, and on my telling her who took her away. But I have seen neither girl nor boy. The door was locked all through the night, for I slept before it with the key under my head, and I opened to him in the morning with mine own hand." When King Shahriman heard this, he cried out, saying, "Alas, my son!" And he was enraged with sore rage against the wazir, who had been the cause of all this case, and said to him, "Go up, bring me news of my son, and see what hath befallen his mind." So the wazir rose, and stumbling over his long skirts, in his fear of the king's wrath, hastened with the slave to the tower. Now the sun had risen when the minister came in to Kamar al-Zaman. He found him sitting on the couch, reciting the Quran. So he saluted him, and seated himself by his side, and said to him, "O my lord, this wretched eunuch brought us tidings which troubled and alarmed us, and which incensed the king." Asked Kamar al-Zaman, "And what hath he told you that to trouble my father?" "In good sooth, he hath troubled none of me." Answered the wazir, "He came to us in fulsome state, and told us a thing which heaven forfend, and the slave added a lie which it befitteth not to repeat. Allah preserve thy youth, and sound sense, and tongue of eloquence, and forbid to come from thee aught of offence." Quoth the prince, "O wazir, and what thing did this pestilent slave say of me?" The minister replied, "He told us that thy wits had taken leave of thee, and thou wouldst have it that a young lady lay with thee last night, and thou wast instant with him to tell thee whither she went, and thou didst torture him to that end." But when Kamar al-Zaman heard these words, he was enraged with sore rage, and he said to the wazir, "'Tis manifest to me in thy deed that you people taught that eunuch to do as he did." And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. And when it was the 188th night, she said, "It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when Kamar al-Zaman heard the words of the wazir, he was enraged with sore rage, and said to him, "'Tis manifest to me in thy very deed that you people taught that eunuch to do this as he did, and forbade him to tell me what became of the young lady who lay with me last night. But thou, O wazir, art cleverer than the eunuch, So do thou tell me without stay or delay, whither went the young lady who slept in my bosom last night? For it was you who sent her and bade her sleep in my embrace, and we lay together till dawn. But I awoke, I found her not. So where is she now? Said the Wazir, O my lord, Kamar al-Zaman, Allah's name encompass thee, but by the Almighty we sent none to thee last night, but thou layest alone with the door locked on thee and the eunuch sleeping behind it. Nor did there come to thee young lady or any other. Regain thy reason, O my lord, and establish thy senses, and occupy not thy mind with vanities. Rejoined Kamar al-Zaman, who was incensed at these words, O Wazir, the young lady in question is my beloved, the fair one with the black eyes and rosy cheeks, who I held in my arms all last night. So the minister wondered at his words and asked, Didst thou see this damsel last night with thine own eyes, on wake or in sleep? Answered Kamar al-Zaman, O ill-omened old man, dost thou fancy I saw her with my ears? Indeed, I saw her with my eyes, and awake, and I touched her with my hand, and I watched by her full half the night, feeding my vision on her beauty and loveliness and grace and tempting looks. But you had schooled her and charged her to speak no word to me, so she feigned sleep, and I lay by her side till dawn, when I awoke, and I found her gone. Rejoined the Wazir, O my lord Kamar al-Zaman, haply thou sawest this in thy sleep. It must have been a delusion of dreams, or a deception caused by eating various kinds of foods, or a suggestion of the accursed devils. Cried the prince, O pestilent old man, wilt thou too make a mock of me, and tell me that this haply is a delusion of dreams, when that eunuch confessed to the young lady, saying, At once I will return to thee and tell thee all about her. When these words he sprang up and rushed to the Wazir and gripped hold of his beard, which was very long, and after gripping it, he twisted his hand in it, and hauling him off the couch, threw him on the floor. It seemed to the minister as though his soul departed his body for the violent plucking of his beard. And Kamar al-Zaman ceased not kicking the Wazir and basting his breast and ribs and cuffing him with his open hand on the nape of his neck, till he had well nigh beaten him to death. Then said the old man in his mind, Just as the eunuch slave saved his life from this lunatic youth by telling him a lie, thus it is even fitter that I do likewise, else he will destroy me. So now for my lie, to save myself, he being mad beyond a doubt. He turned to Kamar al-Zaman and said, O my lord, pardon me, for indeed thy father charged me to conceal from thee this affair of the young lady. But now I am weak and weary, and wounded with tunding, for I am an old man and lack strength and bottom to endure blows. Have therefore a little patience with me, and I will tell thee all, and acquaint thee with the story of the young woman. When the prince heard this, he left off drubbing him, and said, Wherefore, couldst thou not tell me the tale until after shame and blows? Rise now, unlucky old man that thou art, and tell me her story. Quoth the Wazir, Say, dost thou ask of the young lady with the fair face and perfect form? Quoth Kamar al-Zaman, Even so. Tell me, O Wazir, who it was that led her to me and laid her by my side, and who was it that took her away from me by night? And let me know forthright whither she is gone, that I myself may go to her at once. If my father did this deed to me that he might try me by means of that beautiful girl with a view of our marriage, I consent to wed her, and free myself of this trouble. For he did all these dealings with me only because I refused wedlock. But now I consent, and I say again, I consent to matrimony. So tell this to my father. O Wazir, and advise him to marry me to that young lady, for I will have none other, and my heart loveth none save for her. Now rise up at once, and haste thee to my father, and counsel him to hurry on our wedding, and bring me his answer within this very hour. Rejoined the Vizier, "'Tis well." And he went forth from him, hardly believing himself out of his hands. Then he set off from the tower, walking and tripping up as he went for excess of fright and agitation, and ceased not hurrying till he came to the king, Shahriman. And Scheherazade perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased saying her permitted say. Now, when it was the 189th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that Wazir fared forth from the tower, and ceased not running till he came to King Shahriman, who said to him as he sighted him, O thou Wazir, what man hath brought thee to grief, and whose mischief hath treated thee in way unlief? How happened it that I see thee dumbfounded, and coming to me thus astounded? Replied the Wazir, O king, I bring thee good news. And what is it? Quoth Shahriman. Quoth the Wazir, Know that thy son Kamar al-Zaman's wits are clean gone, and that he hath become stark mad. Now, when the king heard these words of the minister, light became darkness in his sight, and he said, O Wazir, make clear to me the nature of his madness. Answered the Wazir, O my lord, I hear and I obey. Then he told them that such and such had passed, and acquainted him with all his son had done. Whereupon the king said to him, Hear, O Wazir, the good tidings which I give thee in return for this thy fair news of my son's insanity. For it shall be the cutting off of thy head, and the forfeiture of my favour, O most ill omened of Wazirs, and foulest of emirs. For I feel that thou hast caused my son's disorder by the wicked advice, and the sinister counsel that thou hast given me first and last. By Allah, if aught of mischief or madness have befallen my son, I will most assuredly nail thee upon the palace dome, and make thee drain the bitterest draught of death. Then he sprang up, and taking the Wazir with him, fared straight for the tower, and entered it. And when Kamar al-Zaman saw the two, he rose to his father in haste from the couch whereon he sat, and kissing his hands, drew back and hung down his head, and stood before him with his arms behind him, and thus remained for a full hour. Then he raised his head towards his sire, and the tears gushed from his eyes and streamed down his cheeks, and he began repeating, Forgive the sin neath which my limbs are trembling, for the slave seeks for mercy from his master. I've done a fault which calls for free confession. Where shall it call for mercy and forgiveness? When the king heard this, he arose and embraced his son, and kissing him between the eyes, made him sit by his side on the couch. Then he turned to the Wazir, and looking at him with eyes of wrath, said, O dog of Wazirs, how dost thou say of my son such and such things, and make my heart quake for him? Then he turned to the prince and said, O my son, what is today called? He answered, O my father, this day is the Sabbath, and tomorrow is the first day. Then come the second day, the third, fourth, fifth day, and lastly Friday. Exclaimed the king, O my son, O Kamar al-Zaman, praise be to Allah for the preservation of thy reason. What is the present month called in our Arabic? Zul-Qa'dah, answered Kamar al-Zaman, and it is followed by Zul-Hijjah. Then cometh Muharram, then Safar, then Rabi the first, and the Rabia the second, the two Jamdas, Rajab, Sha'aban, Ramazan, and Shawwal. At this the king rejoiced exceedingly, and spat in the Wazir's face, saying, O wicked old man, how canst thou say that my son is mad? And now none is mad but thou. Hereupon the minister shook his head, and would have spoken, but bethought himself to await a while and see what next befell. Then the king said to his son, O my son, what words be thou sayest to the eunuch and the Wazir, declaring, I was sleeping with a fair damsel this night? What damsel is this of whom thou speakest? Then Kamar al-Zaman laughed at his father's words and replied, O my father, know that I can bear no more jesting. So add me not another mock, or even a single word on the matter, for my temper hath waxed short, by that you have done this with me. And know, O my father, with assured knowledge, that I consent to marry, but on condition that thou give me the wife, her who lay by my side this night, for I am certain it was thou sentest her to me, and I will have no other. For she madest me fall in love with her, and then dispatchest a message to her before the dawn, and tookest her away from beside me. Rejoined the king, the name of Allah encompass thee about, O my son, and be thy wit preserved from witlessness. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. And so do I cease my tale for this day, until it be morrow.